Hello and welcome to the February 2022 Registry Partners Coding Break. Today, I wanted to review the usual occupational and industry NACER data item number 310 and 320 fields. Collecting information for these fields can be a little tricky at times, so hopefully after this coding break, you will feel a little more confident when you code these fields. Today, we will review why we as registrars collect this information, take a look at the definition of usual occupation and industry, take a pop quiz, and review some common errors. There are many reasons why we collect this information. It can be helpful to researchers and cancer prevention programs. By proper documentation, it may show how a person's job is related to their health by identifying potential work-related health hazards and illnesses. This information can also be used to help guide cancer prevention programs, which could lead to early detection or prevention of some work-related cancers. NACER tells us that this can also be used as an additional measure of socioeconomic status. So now let's take a look at the definition of usual occupation. Usual occupation is the field in which the patient works in. This describes what the patient did for a living the majority of their life before the cancer or tumor diagnosis. According to NACER, this field is usually only collected for patients who are 14 years or older at the time of diagnosis. A couple of examples of occupation are school bus driver or school teacher. At this point, you may be asking, so what do I do if there's no information in the EMR as to what the patient did for a living? If that's the case, then our instructions per NACER state, if it's not noted that they are a student or homemaker, then you can simply text unknown. If the patient had never worked and you find it noted that they were a student or a homemaker, then you can simply text that to the field. Now that we understand a little more about usual occupation, let's take a look at usual industry. Industry is simply the type of business or industry where the patient carried out their occupation. An example for usual industry for a school bus driver would be school transportation, and a school teacher's industry would be described as education. If there is no information within the EMR about what the patient did for a living, but you have the name of the company, then NACER instructs us to enter the name of the company and the city or town. This information can then be used at the central or regional registry where they might determine the type of activity that was performed at that location. Now that we understand the definitions, let's take a pop quiz. And here's the scenario. You're scanning through a patient's EMR and you come across a progress note and the patient's H&P. These documents state the patient is a retired mammography technologist of 15 years and was a homemaker prior to starting her career. What would you enter as the patient's usual occupation? A, retired, B, homemaker, or C, mammography technologist? The answer is C. If the patient held an occupation outside the home, we should always code that information. You should always be as descriptive and specific as possible in your text. There are 100 characters allowed in this field, so there is plenty of room for detail. What would you enter as the patient's usual industry? A, retired, B, technician, or C, healthcare? The answer is C. According to the information we found in the patient's EMR, she held a position of mammography technologist, which is in the healthcare industry. Some common errors are adding the descriptions of retired, unemployed, or disabled. Do not include these descriptions in your text. Just simply record the longest held industry and occupation. If you have exhausted all resources and cannot locate any information within the EMR, do not leave this field blank. Just simply text unknown. Since many entities depend on this information, you can see it is important to be as clear and detailed as you can when you are coding the patient's usual occupation and industry fields. For further details and examples of occupation and industry, please refer to the link noted on the slide. That will direct you to the Cancer Registrar's Guide to Collecting Industry and Occupation. This concludes this month's coding break. Thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you have a wonderful day.